Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm pleased to welcome back to my show Eizabeth May. She's the leader of the Green Party of Canada. She's a long-term politician, and I wanted to reach out to her and find out about this wee controversy.
Yeah.
Eizabeth May, MP from, what is it, Saanich?
Saanich Gulf Islands, and I'm actually the former leader of the Green Party, but I'm leader of our parliamentary caucus. So titles are, but anyway, we have a leadership race going on right now, and they would hate to hear that I was still the leader of the Green Party of Canada.
Well,
so I'm immediately past leader, and the current interim leader is carrying on, and I work in Parliament as the parliamentary leader. It's too many leader titles, absolutely.
Well, Eizabeth May, the parliamentary leader of the Green Party, what is this wee controversy all about?
Well, I'm participating on the Finance Committee calls. We just had more evidence today about it. There are many ways to slice this particular controversy. The most important thing to notice is that more help was offered to Canadian youth for this summer that will not happen because of this controversy. But backing up, was this ever a good idea? Here's what was being offered. The idea that for about $900 million, so under $1 billion, but close to $1 billion, with the concept that the government of Canada wanted to encourage young people to volunteer, but their volunteer time would be compensated with up to a $5,000 grant, depending on how many hours they put in. So questions began to be raised right away, and the questions fall into a number of different categories. If it's really volunteering, are these young people being paid? If they're being paid, it comes down to less than minimum wage. Is that appropriate? Then the other level of questions being, gee, the Trudeau family seems very close to the We charity. And should Justin Trudeau have left the room, recused himself from this conversation? And the more that time goes by, we begin to realize that not only was it the Trudeau family, but Bill Morneau's daughter, the Minister of Finance, has a job with the We charity. So questions of whether there was there certainly are there's some ethical probes happening right now. So it comes down to a quite I'd say significant mess. I think the word mess is appropriate. It was used today in the Finance Committee. Was this a good concept for a program? How did We charity get the contract to deliver the program with up to $43 million going to the We charity to try to fit young people with potential volunteer activities for which they would eventually be paid? So and the bottom line here so far is that the senior civil servants of the Government of Canada are maintaining that it was their recommendation as senior civil servants that only the We charity had the right capacity to deliver a program that was created to be volunteerism, but paid. So I hope I've explained it so far. That's where we're at. There's an awful lot of elements to this, and we'll be hearing about it for a long time, I predict.
So 900 million divided by 5,000 bucks is 180,000 students. Were we really thinking about employing or getting volunteer hours from 180,000 students? Like, if we could, that would be fantastic. I just can't imagine that any group would be able to organize that much.
Yeah, and the numbers are actually more complicated because the We charity, we have Craig and Mark Kilberger, we're going to be using, they have a very substantial network into high schools. So they were also going to be providing some payment to teachers who help them locate students. There would also be some payment to charities that found a way to use the students. So it's not as simple as dividing it up and saying it would, but it was certainly a lot of young people that the government wanted to get involved in volunteerism through this summer and have it run with this. They still have the platform up on the website of I Want to Help. They're still trying to find a way to say to students, yes, you can still go to that website, I Want to Help. Meanwhile, I can say certainly for me and my colleagues in the Green Party in Parliament, we are saying, look, pull the plug on all of this. It doesn't make sense. It's too hard to make it work. I mean, by the way, the program was announced 3 months before any details. So every week when we'd have our updates for MPs, we'd get a technical briefing with various departments in government. So through COVID, we've had a lot of opportunities as members of Parliament to ask questions. And every day someone would say, what some member of Parliament from some party would say, what's going on with this program for engaging young people in volunteerism? When will we get the details on that? So it took 3 months between when the Prime Minister announced the program for the name We Charity to be mentioned as the delivery agent for the program. And then as the controversy flared up, almost immediately, the We Charity said, we're not going to take this on anymore. And then by dribbles began to find out, oh, okay, so Justin Trudeau's mother did get quite substantial payment for speaking at We rallies, and a very small payment, but still a payment to the Prime Minister's wife, and a relatively larger one to his brother. And then the Bill Morneau's daughter works there. So obviously a tight relationship. But if everybody looks at it as this is a charity and there's no real conflict of interest because the Prime Minister didn't get money out of it, that was the first reaction of a lot of people. And I say, well, wait a minute, a lot of family members seem to have gotten paid out of this. So it's going to remain an ethical mess for a while. Now the ethics commissioner is looking into it, and maybe he'll make a quick report and says, I found ethical problems, or I didn't find any ethical problems. But in the meantime, it bogs down money that's been allocated, so it can't get used on anything as long as there's no delivery mechanism to help more students. The Canada Summer Jobs Program went ahead this year without any increased spending, which is kind of crazy given the COVID pandemic. I've been pushing from, late March, let's get the Student Jobs Program with much better funding so we can get more work, more businesses could get help, more nonprofits, because of course the Canada Summer Jobs Program is available to both business and nonprofits and charities. So let's get that money flowing for Canada Summer Jobs. But we had, at least in my community, way more businesses and nonprofits that wanted to hire students than the budget available for the program. So this, to me, it's fixable quickly if we just say, look, the We Charity idea didn't pan out. It'll be fodder for political investigation for quite some months. But the priority now, which heavens to Betsy, it's July. We're getting into late July, and we're talking about how to get young people working this summer. We better ramp up the Student Jobs Program because it's what we have that works.
So I have 2 kids coming out of university, no jobs. People that had offered them jobs rescinded them or deferred them. We could probably talk to lots of people and they'd have similar kind of experiences. So isn't this almost an emergency? And 1982, no, sorry, it was 2007. I was privy to a study that was done. At the time, the economy was bad, and they found out that students that didn't get summer jobs or that first job after they graduated were negatively impacted for the rest of their career because those first experiences, the mentorship they get, the connections they make, and obviously the negative impacts of hanging around their parents' basement for another little while really negatively impacted them for long term. So isn't doing something critically important for your government?
Oh, of course, I'm not the government. I'm opposition, but I feel like in a pandemic, we should all be pulling together and finding the best solution as quickly as possible. I'm really reluctant to spend a lot of time personally, or Green Party members are reluctant to spend time in partisan bickering and bashing the Trudeaus for being involved in the We Charity and not realizing they had to recuse themselves. Trudeau's apologized. It'll still probably keep coming back, but we should keep our focus where it belongs, which is on young people like your kids. I mean, they've got to have that first job, to be able to build a CV is one of the things. If you're going to go apply for a job, it really helps if when you show a future employer, okay, this is the work I've done. I've been an assistant manager at a local United Way delivering a program in school lunches, just as an example, out of the blue. You've got something to show somebody. If you're looking for work as a young people and you can say, I have this degree, I've got my master's degree, but you can't show any work experience, it's really hard to get that first job. So student jobs programs, at least the Canada Summer Jobs Program, gives young people that beginning leg up. And quite often I've found that students who start in a summer job program or internship, an employer is impressed and then they get hired on for good. We are going to be, we are going to need workers. Goodness knows right now, I know in my community, we've got some businesses that are overwhelmed with a spike in economic activity. You wouldn't imagine it during the pandemic. Some businesses are busier than ever and they can't find people to employ. So getting young people connected with employers who need them, and where the young person desperately needs that first job experience to put on a CV, the Canada Summer Jobs Program is I think the best thing
Critical.
we've got right now. Yeah, and it didn't get the boost in funding it should have had. I just say take all the money from the
We
WE contract and
put it to the summer jobs.
exactly.
So let me take you back to the controversy about the ethics. And I want to ask you, have we gone too far? It's sort of as if we assume everyone is crooked and corrupt. And I'll give you an example. So I was president of the Mississauga Arts Council. It was a volunteer job. I was like the chairman of the board. I made no money out of this. Someone who I was related to was mayor of the city, who on an annual basis made a grant, and the ethics commissioner deemed that that was a conflict of interest. And I spoke to Mayor John Tory in Toronto about it, and he said, this is absurd because what this says is my spouse, my kids, any relatives of mine can't volunteer for any charity in all of Toronto. And if they do, then I can no longer be involved in any decision making. So have we taken this whole thing too far? We assume everything is crooked. Like if Margaret Trudeau, who I've seen speak, is an excellent inspirational speaker, is someone that the WE group deem is appropriate to have speak at one of their conferences. And I've gone to 3 of their conferences, 2 in Ottawa and 1 in Toronto. They're excellent.
Yeah.
Shouldn't they have the right to do that?
Absolutely. I think that the issue here is really the one of remuneration. So whatever was going on within, I mean, Justin Trudeau said that he hadn't realized his mother had received as much as $250,000 from a number of speaking engagements with the WE charity. And of course, they can make their own decisions about what they want to pay speakers. Some people who are well known, who were asked to speak at a WE event, said we need to be paid to speak there, and we're told, well, we don't pay speakers. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm not terribly fascinated by it, but I'm watching what goes on and saying, okay, there was inconsistency in the charity. Some speakers got paid, other speakers didn't get paid, and in making the decision to go with this particular charity to deliver this program, it didn't occur to the Prime Minister to double check with his family members, because he's obviously spoken at WE events and he's never been paid. So, you know, you can understand that it was a bit of a blind spot in failing, and the people around him should have said, your mom spoke at this event, your brother spoke at this event. Are you sure none of them were ever paid? Can we follow up and ask your family members? I think an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in this kind of thing. I do think, and I will say, the ethics commissioner will determine whether this breached the code of conduct for MPs. But honestly, I think the fascination with scandal undermines the health of our democracy. So if you think you've got a whiff of scandal and you can, like the Aga Khan Island vacation or whatever, it dominates our politics in a way that's completely disproportionate to its importance. So, I mean, I think that the state of our economy, the pandemic, this requires our attention. The climate crisis demands our attention. How we get through this together should demand our attention. But I'm afraid partisan politics, particularly because we operate under the first past the post voting system. You look around the world at what countries are handling the pandemic best. You've probably seen this, Brian, a lot of people pointing out, gee, it's the countries where women are prime minister happen to seem to have the best results in pandemic. But I would draw attention to another aspect of Finland and Germany and Iceland and New Zealand and a number of others, Taiwan. Not only do they have women leaders, but the electoral process within which they elect those leaders is based on proportional representation. And what I find so dispiriting about Canadian politics is this gotcha idea, and it's also a constant attack mode from one party against the others. That has a lot to do with our voting system, because under first past the post, if you show a cooperative instinct towards another party, if you say a nice thing about another party's leader, which I consistently do, and then people say, oh, well, then, you're hurting your own vote because you're urging people to vote strategically. No, I'm not. I want people to be able to work well and cooperate. And I know from my experience in the last 13 years in politics that our voting system rewards people who play gotcha politics, and it penalizes people who cooperate. And I really hope that we can fix our voting system so we can get some of this nastiness, this constant, oh boy, seeking out whatever scandal it is. And, it's like a little dog that wants to run after a car going by. That may not be the most important thing, but every time that scandal goes by, I watch all the little dogs in Parliament go, yep, 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 until the next little car goes by so they can go, yep, 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 yep. I mean, that is not good government.
Eizabeth May, Parliamentary Leader of the Green Party, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Brian. And stay well, stay safe.
Thank you. Good night.